Hey Vikings Nation, what's up Skol family? Before we jump in, take a deep breath with me, because this one hits right in the heart. 49 years. That's how long it's been since the Minnesota Vikings last even appeared in a Super Bowl. And yes, that number still hurts every single fan who bleeds purple. Here's the wild part though. Even without the Vikings on the field, this Super Bowl storyline is packed with Minnesota Vikings DNA all over it. Former players, former coaches, and familiar names chasing the one thing Vikings fans crave more than anything. That first Lombardi trophy. So stay locked in, because we're about to connect the past, the pain, and the hope of the Vikings through the faces you know, and some you might have forgotten. All colliding on football's biggest stage. The reality is brutal but simple. The Minnesota Vikings are one of the most successful franchises in NFL history without a Super Bowl win. Hall of Fame players, iconic moments, miracle plays, but still no ring. That frustration lives in every Vikings fan. Every season starts with hope. Every season ends with maybe next year. And that cycle wears on a fan base that's been loyal for generations. That's why even a neutral Super Bowl still feels personal for Vikings fans. Because when former Vikings are out there competing, it feels like a piece of Minnesota is still fighting. Still chasing the dream we all want to see fulfilled one day. Let's start with a name that instantly sparks emotion. Stefon Diggs. One of the most electric wide receivers in Minnesota Vikings history, and yes, the same guy behind the Minneapolis Miracle. Diggs gave the Vikings 5 explosive seasons, from 2015 to 2019, stacking highlight catches, big game moments, and Pro Bowl-level production. His frustration with the offense eventually boiled over, leading to his departure. A move that changed Vikings history forever. Because that trade turned into Justin Jefferson. Pain and progress all in one decision. And now Diggs stands on the Super Bowl stage, still chasing what neither he nor the Vikings could finish together. Another familiar face in the trenches is Garrett Bradbury. Drafted in the first round back in 2019, Bradbury spent 6 seasons as the Vikings starting center. He never quite reached elite status, but he battled every snap and became a steady presence in the middle of the offensive line. Consistency matters, especially at center. Seeing him in the Super Bowl is a reminder that development paths aren't always straight. Sometimes they just take longer and lead somewhere unexpected. Now let's talk about one of the most unforgettable short runs in recent Vikings memory. Josh Dobbs. The Pastronaut. 2 games. Absolute chaos. Dobbs parachuted into Minnesota and immediately led comeback wins that felt straight out of a movie. The Atlanta Falcons game, then the New Orleans Saints. Pure adrenaline for Vikings fans. It didn't last, but those moments mattered. And seeing Dobbs still grinding, still competing, shows why Vikings fans embraced him so fast. Depth matters too, and Vidarian Lowe is a perfect example. A 6th-round pick who never became a headline name in Minnesota, but quietly did his job. Sometimes NFL careers aren't about stardom. They're about survival, growth, and staying ready. Lowe embodies that. Every snap earned in this league counts, and his presence on this stage proves it. On the defensive side, Khyiris Tonga is another former Viking making noise. Signed as a free agent in 2022, he quickly became a reliable interior defender. Tonga gave Minnesota solid reps in the trenches, doing the dirty work that doesn't show up on highlight reels. Roster turnover is brutal in the NFL, but his journey shows how Vikings development still echoes across the league. Jacqueline Roy's path is different but just as real. A 5th-round pick who spent limited time in Minnesota before being waived. Not every draft pick sticks, but every opportunity matters. Practice squads, reps, development, it's all part of the grind. Seeing names like Roy attached to the Super Bowl reminds us how wide the Vikings' footprint really is. Let's shift to the coaching connections, starting with Todd Downing. His football roots run deep in Minnesota, long before most fans even noticed. From high school coaching to years inside the Vikings organization, Downing helped shape offensive systems behind the scenes. These are the architects fans rarely see, but championships are built on their details. Now, here's a name that still sparks debate. Sam Darnold. His season with the Vikings redefined his career. leading Minnesota to a dominant 14-3 record and one of the most efficient quarterback seasons in franchise history. Darnold silenced doubters fast. The Vikings wanted him back. It just didn't work out. And now, watching him start on the Super Bowl stage is both painful and validating for Vikings fans. Linebacker Chaz Surratt is another example of raw potential. A former college quarterback turned defender, his athleticism always jumped off the screen. His time in Minnesota was brief, but development isn't always instant. Sometimes players bloom later in different systems with different voices guiding them. In the secondary, Shaquille Griffin's Vikings stint showed flashes of reliability. Playing meaningful snaps as a rotational corner isn't easy. Roster math forced tough decisions, but Griffin proved he belongs in the league. Depth corners often decide playoff games, something Vikings fans know all too well. Cam Akers brings pure fun into the story. Who could forget him throwing a touchdown pass in London? Akers became a fan favorite not just for production, but for energy and versatility. Moments like that are why Vikings fans stay invested, even when players move on. Logan Brown's journey highlights how competitive roster spots truly are. An undrafted free agent who didn't crack Minnesota's final roster. But he didn't disappear. He kept grinding, kept learning. That's the NFL reality. Persistence beats talent when talent stops working. Clint Kubiak's growth is one of the most fascinating coaching arcs tied to the Vikings. From quarterback's coach to offensive coordinator, he absorbed lessons the hard way. His evolution shows how time and experience shape leaders. Minnesota played a role in that foundation, whether fans realize it or not. Rick Dennison's fingerprints are all over the Vikings' modern run game. Offensive line development, scheme design, his influence was massive. Those trenches didn't dominate by accident. And seeing his career continue is a reminder that coaching continuity matters. Leslie Frazier's legacy in Minnesota is complicated but meaningful. Defensive mastermind. Head coach during a transitional era. Leadership during instability is never easy. His continued presence in the league shows the respect he's earned. Andrew Janako's quarterback development roots trace directly back to Minnesota. Years of work behind the scenes. Quarterback play doesn't improve by accident. It's coached, refined, and protected. Vikings fans should recognize how much those early years mattered. Finally, Carl Scott closes this Vikings connection web. Defensive backs, coverage schemes, preparation. One season in Minnesota, but lasting influence. Every coach leaves something behind. So Vikings fans, here's the question. When you watch the Super Bowl, who are you rooting for? The former Vikings chasing their ring, or the pain that fuels hope for Minnesota's future? Because every one of these journeys proves the Vikings are never far from the spotlight, even when they're not on the field. If you believe the Minnesota Vikings time is coming, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and tell me which former Viking you're rooting for. Subscribe for more Minnesota Vikings news, share this with your Skol crew, and as always, Skol and see you in the next one. Purple Heart American Football.